Okay, what I wanted to do with this one is not to talk about specific turtle species or get into particular taxonomy or anything like that. What I thought I'd do with this talk really is just a kind of an overview to really talk about very, very quickly what's actually happened within turtles in Australia over the last 100 million years. So it is going to be a tour force. And the reason for doing it is that there have been some dramatic changes in that period. Most people tend to think of turtles as these slow plodding things that do everything slowly, change slowly, evolve slowly, and their life's terribly unexciting. When you look in the fossil record doesn't say that at all. In fact, it says this is a very dynamic group of animals which has undergone a number of periods of major change, particularly in Australia. So I thought this might be the opportunity to actually start looking at what actually happened in that last 100 million years that we know of here. So if we start from the modern day and perhaps then jump backwards in time, what have we got now? We know we've got 6 species of marine turtle, and after that, what have we got? We've got 25 species of freshwater turtle, all are side neck turtles and all in one family, the Chelidae. So that's quite a restricted group. Apart from that, we have one curious member of the Chelidae, the pig-nosed turtle, confined to the northern part of Australia. So you look at that and say, well, okay, the marine turtles, okay, we're looking at groups that are widely distributed, pretty cosmopolitan. Once you start to look at the land turtles, that's fairly depauperate. Why? Because we know when we go back in the fossil record doesn't talk about the depauperate fauna of turtles at all. If you go backwards in time, what you find are not only many more species, but other families as well. So there's been a reduction, a significant reduction. Okay. These are the modern marine turtles that we have that frequent Australia. Most of them are modest in size, typically around about a metre shell length. The only real exception would be things like Dermatopilus, the leathery turtle, which would go up to potentially 3 metres. You go back into the Cretaceous in Australia, you've got bigger monsters. Okay. Now these guys don't have much kinship at all to the modern marine turtles at all. They're a very different group of beasts entirely, and yet they were quite widespread and quite common. Not now. On the land, what do we know back in the Cretaceous? Yes, there were freshwater turtles. We've got some peculiar things like Chelicarapurus. We're not terribly sure what it is. The only serious suggestion for it has been that it's a cryptodome. In other words, it's not related to any of the current freshwater turtles that we have in Australia at all. It has no kinship at all. Do we have any plurides in the Cretaceous? Yes, we do. Like the Reach has quite a number of them. Unfortunately, very little of this has been worked on, and so no genera have been described at this stage. All we know is that we've got representatives of the family there. So the early representatives of the land-based freshwater turtles were certainly present 100 million years ago in Australia. But apparently not widespread though. What else was roaming around 100 million years ago? Well, again, like the Ridge tells us, that there were land lumbering turtles. There were larger things behaving rather like the more modern day tortoises. So 3 of these have now been formally described, and of course a new family has been generated to try and accommodate these beasts. There's a suggestion there's a kinship with Myelanates, the giant horned turtles, but that's yet to be demonstrated. Yeah, a very, very different world. These guys obviously gone. There's no trace of these anywhere after the Cretaceous. So let's skip then into the Cenozoic. So what's going on? The Cretaceous world is just ailing, apart from the presence of the chelids. You jump into the Cenozoic, what we find is things rapidly change. And the big change that we see is a big rise in the number of chelid species and chelid genera. across sites. And we see this most notably in Central Australia, but also at Riversleigh. Riversleigh probably got the best record of a lot, although a lot of this is still to be described. The other thing we find in the Cenozoic is that soft-shell turtles start to pop up. Now this is interesting because this is a cosmopolitan group of turtles that is still widely distributed worldwide, makes an appearance in Australia, and then stuffs them. No one's offering suggestions or explanations for why that might have been the case. They came, they didn't last terribly long, just simply left their remains behind. The other thing that we see in this, of course, was the big rise in the lumbering giant horned turtles. And again, Riversleigh's got a very, very commendable record of these animals. And again, unfortunately, most haven't been described yet, but that's going to happen. And what do we see with these big, massive big turtles? Of course, culminating in Ninjamints, which was estimated, the largest of those was estimated to get up to about 800 kilos. Right, so you're talking about tanks. So what do we know about these things? Well, okay, they're widely distributed across eastern and parts of northern Australia. No record in Western Australia or any that part of the continent. The Riversleigh record says that they were not an uncommon species at all. But we know during the Pliocene and then coming into the Pleistocene that something happened within this group. The group retreated coastally and then it abandoned Australia altogether. Now, the assumption is that the species would have died out, but it didn't. It starts to pop up on some of the near offshore islands. And so the one that everyone knows about, of course, is the Lord Howe giant horned turtle. Lord Howe was one of the closer islands to Australia. But of course, specimens of giant horned turtles now have been found, out through the Fijian Islands and so on. And they, the question's got to be asked: why would you abandon the mainland and drift across the ocean in the hope of, maybe washing up on some forlorn, island as your last refuge? What's going on? What's actually happened on the mainland to have done that to you? And then the other thing, of course, that's happened much more recently in the Miocene. We've had the Cretaceous come in. So we've got one species of, again, what was a large cosmopolitan group of animals, which has now totally died out in the Northern Hemisphere. And the last representative now has found refuge in Australia. What's going on in turtles is just fantastic. It's weird and wonderful. If you just concentrate on the chelids and look at what happened with the chelids, the fossil record tells you that they were, during the Cenozoic, particularly in the middle Cenozoic, they've gone ballistic. And there are lots of genera still waiting to be described, I should point out. A couple have been described. So the species is flourishing. It's doing remarkably well until the Pleistocene, when it all came crashing down again. So the chelids in the Pleistocene were facing serious extinction. However, they didn't go. They did manage to survive. And what we see now is a resurgence. So a lot of the geneticists, for instance, who look at a lot of the current species of chelids are frustrated all the time because they are all so closely related. They've gone through a massive bottleneck and they're now coming out of it again. But the good news is they're speciating quickly. They're actually quite resilient. If you want to see turtle habitat from 20 million years ago, that's what you see now. If you want to know why they died out, have a look at their habitat. You've got a fair idea. It was the drying of Australia. Was a big issue. But in the Pleistocene, the Ice Ages, just that cold was a big issue as well. And it's a problem for species that rely so much on sex selection, temperature-based sex selection. It's a huge factor. Okay, just a few things just to tell you that we don't know everything, and there are all sorts of weird and wonderful stories in there. Some of you know the story about Lugrak's turtle. Some years ago, Mike and I described the species from a Pleistocene deposit at Riversleigh from the terrace site. And then we had the embarrassing situation of actually finding the thing that's actually still alive and swimming around. these animals do come back to haunt you, but probably a better example of that sort of thing is this one, which was a project we got involved in a couple of years ago, which is looking at a midden deposit on Vanuatu, and in the midden were the slaughtered remains of giant horned turtles. Now, there'd never been any record of humans ever coming in contact with myolamins. They obviously did, and humans found a very, very good use for them. They ate them. No one would have expected these species would have hung on as long as they possibly did. So, yeah, whether we were the final straw for these turtles, I don't know. So all I want to do is let you know that turtles have had a fantastic and a really, really dynamic history within Australia, and never underestimate them. They've been hit around, knocked around, and in the case of felids, they've been seriously taken to the brink. But they're quite resilient animals, and they're coming back. And that's all I want to say. Anything? No? Good? No.
Yes, those really old Cretaceous
How big is that? Cretaceous alone was the largest one that we know of. We don't have a complete skeleton or anything like that at all. So it's all based on extrapolation from bits somewhere between 3 to 4 metres shell length. So you're talking about seriously large animals. So if you're going to ask me what they ate or anything like that, no idea.